Kind of surprised me yesterday, the Veterans Committee announcing their Hall of Fame candidates and three managers, and they're all intertwined because I think Joe Torre was before Bobby Cox, and then Joe, I think, was before Tony La Russa in St. Louis, and they're all three going in together. And we bring in Joe Torre, the former Yankee skipper, now working for Major League Baseball. Congrats, Joe. How'd that phone call go?
Well, it was a little disruptive at first, Dan, because my wife had flown in on the red eye just in the event this happened yesterday. She came in from L.A., and she didn't get to the room till about 6 o'clock, so we just laid down. I happened to doze off, and she was elbowing me about 8 o'clock when she's hearing my phone, it was on vibrate. And I went to answer the phone. I think I hung up on Jane Clark, who was calling with the good news, and I was happy she called back. But that's how it went. It was about 10 after 8 in the morning, and we were sort of given a heads up that we'd hear by 9 o'clock, and if we didn't hear by 9, then it wasn't good news. So 10 after 8, the phone rang, and, I was a lot more excited than I thought I was going to be.
Do you jump up and down, hug your wife, celebrate?
Well, yeah, you know what I did? Because we had a whole thing that we had to go over. I had to be over at the hotel where they were making an announcement by 9-ish, and so it wasn't a lot of time. But I did reach out to my children, and of course my wife was with me, and I called my brother Frank, just family members basically, and just to give them a heads up. Frank drove up with a couple of friends from the Palm Beach area, so it was nice having them there yesterday.
Hall of Famer. Did you ever think that?
Yeah.
Did you ever think you would hear that?
No, I just thought it was beyond my reach. I mean, as a player, I had a pretty good career, and some people would say to me, I think you had the numbers to go in as a player, and those people were always trying to be nice. And of course my brother was my brother, so I knew where he was coming from, and I never had any resentment because I never really had any. It really wasn't an obsession of mine, probably based on the fact that I had no control over it, just based on somebody else deciding on what your career looked like. So and once the last couple of days I've been hanging out with Tony La Russa because he also works for the commissioner, and we've been, bouncing this replay stuff around, and we finally got this conversation around to ourselves, and then I think we both started getting a little anxious.
He's Joe Torre, Hall of Famer, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. I was wondering about this when I knew we were going to have you on. I see what's happening with the Redskins, where you have an owner involved, or it's the Cowboys with an owner involved. You have star players, and you navigated this brilliantly with the Yankees. You had star players, and you had a big market, and you had a big owner there. Looking back on it, how did you do it?
Well, I knew going in what I wanted to do. I knew that George was a presence. I also knew that he was the boss. And, you can't, I know, like Billy Martin did, try to fight him tooth and nail. But, of course, in all fairness, I got George on the back nine. He didn't, probably have the same energies that he had back when Billy was managing. But I just felt that my job was to, first off, keep George's comments out of the clubhouse. I mean, they had to know that I was making the decisions baseball-wise. They also had to know that I had a boss, but he wasn't affecting who was playing and who wasn't playing. And, to me, that was important. Plus the fact that, you talk about high-priced players. We've always had that. But if guys are interested in winning, there was only one guy that was hired to make decisions, and that was the manager. So I had a good group of players, not only ability-wise but character-wise, and that certainly made my job easier.
Would you have survived George Steinbrenner 20 years earlier?
Well, we won the first year, and of course there were rumblings when we started the 98 season after we lost in the first round of 97. That we started the '98 season, like 1-4 or something like that, and there were rumblings that my job was on the line. But it came out that we wind up winning 125 games, including all the postseason stuff that year. And but again, you have to take when you go to work for George Steinbrenner. I know my brother Frank warned me. He says, "You realize how many managers he's had?" I said, "Yeah, but this is a chance I'm going to find out if I can manage or not, because he's certainly going to be able to give me the horses." And that's basically, what he did. And, I came out on the good end of it.
I know it's about inclusion and wanted to celebrate the Hall of Fame with you, but I also look at who didn't get in. I think George Steinbrenner is a Hall of Famer. I think Marvin Miller's a Hall of Famer. I think Marvin is up there with probably, and not in this order, but you got Babe Ruth and Jackie Robinson. I think Marvin Miller fits into that crowd with impact, lasting impact on the game, and certainly George Steinbrenner gave the blueprint to every one of these owners of what to do, how to do it. Your thoughts on those two not getting into the Hall of Fame?
No, those are the two I mentioned yesterday. I mean, Marvin, I worked side by side with Marvin during the early years and the early strike years. And, to me, when Bowie Kuhn went into the Hall of Fame, I mean, there's no way that, he should be in and Marvin not sitting there alongside of him, because they were contemporaries at the time. And, they went at each other a lot in the negotiations, and then Bowie became commissioner. But there's no question in my mind, and I know Marvin was disappointed, especially the last time around when he was still with us, because he certainly deserves to be in there. And I'm a little curious on, how I know he was very close a few years ago, but I think he had 6 votes yesterday, and it's a little surprise. It's very surprising. And George, you mentioned it. I mean, I think other owners have tried to emulate him and have fallen short in a lot of areas. But the one thing we could never accuse George of is not really putting the money back into his ball club, not doing things for the city of New York. And he certainly was a tough boss to work for, but I don't think you'd want to change anything.
The big topic at the winter meetings, how replay, is it expanded replay? Is that a topic of discussion, or have we already decided what replay is going to be next season?
Well, in fact, I just pulled up to the hotel here while we're speaking. We're going to have a meeting just to prepare for our meeting tomorrow with the managers and general managers. We're going to have probably going to be a 4-hour meeting tomorrow to go through what we've decided on. And really our thought process. And on our subcommittee, it's John Sherholtz of the Braves and Tony La Russa and myself. And, of course, we have a number of people that are much smarter than us putting it together on, statistically and figuring out how to execute it. But we're Dan, we're going to expand replay. We're not going to just open up the whole ball of wax here. We're going to just try to go slow, and if we have to add, we'll add. I think it's a lot easier than going out there and trying to do too much at one time. Initially you have people, and I've talked to people, even people in baseball, say, well, why don't you just have somebody look at a screen and tell you, what happened? It's not that simple. I initially thought it was going to be a lot simpler than it turned out to be. So we want to make sure that, we go out there and, first of all, make sure people know that we're going to, our intention right now is to get the game-changing play, right, and not to get necessarily everything right, because there are a lot of bang plays that could be called one way, but you see they're the other way because they're so close. But you have the technology to show that. But if we decide on we're getting everything right, this game's going to last forever. And then that's the one thing that I don't want to do, is upset the rhythm of this game, because it's too important. Other sports that have replay, they have timeouts built in. We don't have that, and I don't think it's doing the game any favors if we try to go too much with this.
Can you do central location away from the ballpark, so you have a nerve center where somebody is looking at replay for games, but not at the ballpark?
That's our plan right now. We're talking about remote, and the baseball advanced media in Manhattan. right now is a venue that we have those capabilities, and right now we're deciding on because there's a when you have one day that could have 16 games, of course they're different time zones, so we're trying to put together what makes sense as far as who's watching it, and and how to let the umpires know at their ballparks how we're going to do this. We pretty much know what we're going to do in that regard, but right now we're still talking to the Player Association, we're still talking to the Umpires Union, so there are a lot of considerations. But tomorrow is going to be an important meeting, so we need to make sure that when we tell the managers how we're going to do this thing, that they're understanding it. And, of course, we're going to do some practicing in spring training. We did some in the Arizona Fall League, and the technology, we're confident that the technology will keep it from being too long to wait for a decision.
Well, congrats. Have fun at the meetings, and thanks for joining us, Joe.
Thanks, Dan. It's always a pleasure.
All right, that's Joe Torre, former Yankee manager and now Hall of Famer.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.